Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 2, Kitson Harcher. We warmly welcome the family of Private Charles Ethelbert Hite, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome Mr. Sam Walsh, Chair of Theatre 180, and Mrs. Leanne Walsh, accompanied by Miss Rebecca Davis, Executive Director, and Mr. Stuart Hulse, Artistic Director. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family, visitors to the memorial, and students on behalf of Australian International Academy, Sydney, Strathfield, New South Wales campus. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is God by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Students and visitors who are able to do so, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record that they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Charles Ethelbert Hite. It is in honour of the proud tradition of Indigenous Australian service that we tell their story today. Charles Hite was born in 1886 to William and Selina Hite in northern Tasmania, and his family later moved to the port town of Wynyard. He attended a local state school before becoming a labourer in the district. In August 1915, Hite and his older brother Edgar volunteered for service in the Australian Imperial Force. Their younger brother John joined the AIF in March the following year. All three brothers were Aboriginal men, their father William being a Tasmanian Aboriginal man. Over the course of the First World War, more than 850 Aboriginal men saw active service, despite discriminatory recruiting rules designed to prevent them from enlisting. Charles Hite began his army training at Claremont, north of Hobart, in October. He and his brother Edgar embarked on the transport ship Ulysses and travelled to Egypt. In Egypt, Hite undertook further training at the large Australian Army camp outside Cairo. In March 1916, he joined his unit, the 12th Australian Infantry Battalion. Later that month, the Australian infantry sailed from Egypt to the port of Marseille, and from there travelled by train to the Somme River in northern France. In the Somme sector, the men of the 12th Battalion had their first introduction to Western Front trench warfare. In late July, members of the unit took part in the capture of German trenches around the ruined village of Pozières. Although the Australians captured and held their objectives, the 12th Battalion lost more than 1/3 of its men killed or wounded. Hite was among the wounded, having been struck by shell fragments or bullets in his right arm and his face. He was evacuated to hospital near the French coast, where he recovered quickly. He rejoined his unit in September when it was behind the lines in training. The 12th Battalion returned to the Somme for winter. That winter of 1916-1917 was the coldest in France in 40 years. Mud and rain alternated with snow and freezing temperatures. In January 1917, Hite came down with an illness known as trench fever. He was evacuated to hospital, where he spent a fortnight recovering. When Hite returned to his unit, the battalion was stationed north of the Somme River. As the weather warmed, frozen ground turned to thick mud. The unit spent time in training and in the front lines, when it would occasionally come under heavy bombardment by German artillery or grenades thrown from the opposite side of no man's land. During March, German forces made a deliberate withdrawal from their forward positions so that their lines were significantly shortened and easier to defend. British commanders sought to follow up on this withdrawal with attacks on a series of strong points in the German line. In early April, the 12th Battalion was involved in one of these attacks, south of the city of Arras. The attack began on the 8th of April, which was Easter Sunday. The 12th Battalion advanced in the early hours of the morning against German machine gun and rifle fire. German artillery also fired on the battalion, and a snowstorm began that afternoon. Charles's younger brother Jack, also in the battalion, later wrote to his sister, "It was a hard Easter. I will never forget that Sunday morning. It was hell on earth." The Australians managed to capture their objectives and consolidate their defences, but at a very heavy cost for the 12th Battalion. Over 2 days, 1/4 of the unit's men were killed or wounded. Hite was among the dead, but the circumstances of his death were unclear. But at some point during the battle, he was struck by bullets and killed. An inquiry later in the year determined that he had been killed in action on the 10th of April 1917. Charles Hite was 30 years old. Hite was buried near where he fell, but the location of his grave was lost in later fighting. He is commemorated on the Villers-Bretonneux Memorial in France, alongside more than 10,000 Australian servicemen who were killed in the war and have no known grave. Charles's older brother, driver Edgar Hite, transferred to the 1st Australian Pioneer Battalion and survived the war. His younger brother, Private John Hite, served in the 12th Battalion and also survived the war. Both brothers returned to Australia in 1919. Private Charles Ethelbert Hite is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Charles Ethelbert Hite, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.